Happy Friday. This week AI causes a shortage of metal rails somehow. Spotify starts labeling and filtering out AI artists, and I went hands-on with the Pixel 11 series. Welcome to the Friday Checkout. This video was sponsored by boot.dev. Okay, for my first story of the week, if you thought that memory and GPU shortages would be the end of AI, well, think again. How about a massive shortage for sliding metal rails for furniture, for example? Well, the fantastic Tim Kalpin once again dug through Taiwan's vast supply chain and highlighted that KingSlide, a random company that makes these things for wardrobes, desk drawers, and so on, has pivoted to making them for AI server racks as well, and is now making $500 million in revenue a year from rail kits alone, and has gross margins of an absolutely ridiculous 84%. Those are higher margins than even the chip companies and the memory makers have, but I guess if you have enough of a shortage of basically anything, the prices will just go to infinity. The company's stock looks like a caricature, and it is up 12,000%, and as a result, the company's founder is now reportedly Taiwan's richest man. The guy who makes metal rails is richer than the people over at TSMC or Foxconn and so on. That all makes sense. Oh, but next, printed circuit boards need special materials like glass fiber for copper-clad laminates that come from a single Japanese company called Nitobo, and guess what? There is a shortage of those as well. And then also for every other component that you can think of, like power supplies, cooling, and so on. I won't go into details for every product, but yeah, AI is causing shortages of just about everything you can think of. Great! Okay, for my second story of the week, Spotify has done a pretty good thing for once. They introduced a new label for AI-generated artist identities. These visible AI persona badges will be coming to artist profiles starting in mid-September, and they'll pull both from voluntary declarations and automatic classifications. And what's surprising is that by default, Spotify will not include AI personas in any editorial or algorithmic recommendations. Now, importantly, this label does not say that the songs themselves were AI generated, they're all about the artists being real artists or AI generated personas. So a real artist could still have AI generated songs and they wouldn't be captured by this specific system. Now, they say that artists will be notified and given an opportunity to self-disclose or appeal if Spotify thinks that they're AI, and listeners will also be given the ability to report artist profiles that they believe represent AI personas. So that's a pretty big step, and Spotify says that they're also working on actually recognizing and flagging AI-generated music too. Given that last week Suno, the most popular AI music generation platform, announced that they will start watermarking songs that they generate as well, I guess we might hopefully start getting better visibility into what music is or is not AI generated. I personally absolutely hate being recommended music and then finding out that it's AI, so at least a toggle would be the minimum, I guess. Okay, for my third story of the week, I went hands-on with the Google Pixel devices. There's a new Pixel 11, 11 Pro, and 11 Pro XL phone, as well as a foldable and a new Pixel Watch, and overall I have mixed feelings. On the outside, the biggest difference is a new highlight feature, which is a colorful LED dot that replaces what used to be a temperature sensor. It weirdly only turns on when you get a call, and then when your phone is face down on the table and you talk to Gemini to give you feedback that your phone hears you and is working. That is strangely limited for now. My highlight instead, pun intended, is that the night mode photos are now much faster. On the right you can see the new Pixel, and on the left you can see an older one, and you can see that the difference is pretty big. And while we're at the cameras, they now also feature various looks that allow you to pick whether you want more contrast, a cooler or a warmer look, and so on, and your preferences will actually stick. This looks pretty neat. Then there's Magic Frame, where the phone takes a video and then later on picks out what it thinks are the best frames from that, and then uses AI to upscale those to full-size photos, which actually looked kind of good in the demo. So that's all fine, but the hardware updates were pretty minor this year. There's a new Tensor G6, though we barely got any details about what it's actually new about it, and we also got more starting storage, but there's less RAM at 12 gigs and a $100 higher starting price. Ouch. Also, the foldable looks even more last-gen when you consider that Samsung and Apple are both making pretty big moves this year. At least the Pixel Watch actually seems like a nice upgrade, with my studio mate Kilian saying that it feels significantly more snappy, while also getting things like more accurate GPS. Overall, it seems like a pretty mixed year, and most of the features that are actually exciting are software-based, so I guess you get most of them on the previous generation Pixels anyway. Okay, as for our release monitor, we started with Insta360 and DJI, who both announced their new flagship 360-degree cameras one day apart, and it really feels like the two companies are more similar than ever. The form factors now look almost identical, and they've both copied the best ideas from each other. The Osmo now has replaceable lenses as well. Insta360 finally picked up 10-bit iLog colors. Both have have 1-inch sensors, both have built-in storage now, and both also got more expensive with the X6 costing $699, for example. The biggest difference is of course that DJI is still banned in the US, while Insta360 is not. Moving on, after endless teasing, Honor finally announced its robot phone. It features a motorized gimbal for its main camera, and it also comes with a collaboration with the German cinema camera giant Arri. The gimbal is supposed to be both a filming tool and also a kind of cute robotic companion, but for now it's only available in China. And then moving on to our brief, here's a story that I missed from last week, but which absolutely blew my mind. PatronView, which is a helpful-looking database for American donor lists, published a blog post saying that 99% of their website traffic is now bots. And this is despite him working really hard to fight them. He shows massive spikes of bot traffic, like how here in one day he got 3.6 million requests, mostly from new bots going online in China. He says to get one real human, Googlebot and Bingbot said 46 and 406 requests respectively, which he actually considers acceptable, but then Claude sends 35,000 and Amazon sends an infinite number because despite sending 117,000 requests per day, they just feed the data to Rufus and Alexa and never actually bring him any visitors. The crawlers even form botnets to jump through all the hoops. I recommend reading this story in full. It is an absolutely crazy one. I've linked to it down below along with all the other news stories and all the other products from this episode. Talking of bots, Claude now plans to watermark AI-generated content, including text. This is in response to the EU's AI Act, and when a supported Claude model generates text, it weaves an imperceptible watermark directly into the text itself. You won't see it, and Claude says it doesn't change the meaning, quality, or readability of Claude's response, and because the watermark is part of the text, it will travel with the text when it is copied and pasted elsewhere, and may even persist through some editing. It'll be really interesting to see this in practice and how easy it is to trick, how often it generates false positives, etc. Next, have you ever thought that the one thing the AI industry really desperately needs is more debt to fund the build-out of even bigger data centers? If the answer is yes, then you will absolutely love the next story. Nvidia had a bright new idea that should convince big lenders like Apollo, BlackRock, and so on to lend $500 billion more to build data centers than they would have already done otherwise. How? Well, Nvidia basically says that the lenders should start accepting GPUs as collaterals for their loans, and now Nvidia will guarantee with their own money that they'll hold their value. If they don't and a data center can't pay back its loans, Nvidia will compensate the creditors in case of a bankruptcy. That means that if data center businesses start having problems, Nvidia will have two problems at the same time. First, they will lose their revenue, right? Because their clients are starting to go bankrupt and can't buy new Nvidia chips from them. And then simultaneously, Nvidia will also be liable to pay loads of money to their creditors. Sounds like a really risky move. But hey, moving on to some good news, Tesla has filed to build a $10 billion Project Crystal Sun solar factory in Texas. They want to start building solar panels in the US on a pretty large scale if this actually gets built, and they filed to get their tax breaks. But hey, before you start worrying about Musk becoming a good guy, we've also just learned about his upcoming terafab chip plant, which will apparently use gas turbines and pump pollutants into the air just like its data centers. So there's that. Anyway, back to the good news, Google is rolling out tap to share for Pixel and Samsung phones, which means you can now tap two phones on top of each other to make them pair and start a quick share. It's a pretty obvious copy of Apple's implementation of the AirDrop feature, but nice. Then in headlines that made me go yikes, the US will apparently allow some private firms to carry out cyber attacks on its behalf now. This will, quote, allow the federal government to use innovative capabilities of the private sectors to combat cybercrime and threats targeting Americans. Nice. And then in more lighthearted news, Instagram now has a new word mark. Everyone says it looks kind of like Instagram with a Z, which I agree with, but okay. And hey, I've been flirting more and more with the idea of switching to a Linux computer and also with the idea of starting a Linux home server to host a couple of projects myself. And while I was learning the skills necessary for this, I tried out my sponsor boot.dev and was very positively surprised. I have specifically started with their Linux courses, of course, but boot.dev goes far beyond those. It's an online platform to help you learn real useful DevOps skills. You start with basic Python for beginners, but then you move on to more advanced programming lessons, database management, building an AI agent, setting up and operating file servers using AWS, Docker, and so on. These are real practical cloud engineering skills, not just theoretical frameworks. All of their courses are hands-on and interactive, and you constantly build fun projects as you go, and I've so far found all the ones that I've done really fun. The platform is made to feel kind of like a game, and right now, for example, Lucretia is attacking, and I can help defeat her using my newly acquired skills. Also, if you get stuck or if you need an explanation, their Discord guides you through whatever you need help with. Whether you're just learning to master the tech yourself like I am, or whether you want to start on a journey that might land you a DevOps job at some point in the future, you can go to boot.dev and use my code FRIDAY to get 25% off your entire first year on an annual plan. That is boot.dev with the code FRIDAY to get 20% off. Alternatively, you can also scan the QR code.